Hello. The Reform Party is letting all sorts of people in that it wouldn't have taken in before. This latest article from the BBC shows that 29 councillors have defected to his party in recent weeks from parties including the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. It takes the party's total number of council seats to more than 100, and those numbers are going up. But they are people, especially the Liberal Democrats, who are sometimes more hard left than the Labour Party. The Reform Party might have waited a little bit before taking these type of new members. There are many, of course, who are unaffiliated to start with, but many disaffected voters from the edges of these other political parties, and particularly the Conservatives. And this is going on to such an extent that commentators such as the British Lander, it's a very good site by the way, and I recommend it, British Lander has voiced his deep disappointment with how reform is shaping up. And it's a disappointment that I share. And I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Now, first of all, I want to say, if the lighting's a bit dark, I'm really sorry about that. I'm wearing a white sweater. This is what I was wearing to the stables this morning. And the lights, the overhead lights, the lights in the ceiling, they were flaring off it and it wasn't good. But I might have to go back to the stables because my horse isn't well. So, I'm sticking to this. Anyway, let's get back to the Reform Party. Lander has speculated that Farage has got old and tired, which is actually something I also said a few videos ago. To recap, I pointed out that Farage has been fighting the establishment bravely and heroically for 30 years, and it's quite understandable that the long battle could have rubbed off quite a few of the sharp edges. But I'm wondering whether it's more than that. You see, Farage isn't just showing signs of tiredness. He appears to be directly contradicting everything that his party was standing for just before the last elections. As soon as anyone talks about repatriation, he not only shuts down the discussion, flatly stating that repatriation of illegal migrants is impossible, you just can't do it, in his words. But in the case of Rupert Lowe, for instance, he's gone to some extraordinary lengths, not only to expel him from the party, but to destroy his reputation. Farage has said that Lowe's views would make the Reform Party unelectable, but a poll commissioned by a chap called Adam Wren, I think this must be the fellow, shows that the voters' opinions... Now, let's see, I've got something here. Yeah, voters' opinions are as follows. This is a poll called Find Out Now. Show that 80% of all voters support the deportation of migrants who commit violent crimes. Among Reform voters, this number is 99%. So Farage's main supporters, Reform members, almost 100% say deportation should be carried out, especially on people who commit migrants who commit violent crimes. When asked about the deportation of migrants who commit sex offences, I would say that sex offences are violent crimes, but obviously the poll had another opinion. Anyway, the public is again overwhelmingly supportive at 85%, while Reform voters responded with 96% support. I might say sexism there. But even so, it's still a big figure, isn't it? A majority of the public also support deporting migrants who've entered the UK illegally, 66% according to this poll, and Reform voters 99%. So Reform voters generally will say that anyone who comes here illegally or commits a violent crime, at 99% of Reform voters say they should go. So why is Farage so dead set against his basic supporters? Because what he appears to be doing right now is assuming the mantle of the Conservative Party. And you have to wonder why. At least I have to wonder why. And that's what I've been wondering. And what I've been coming up with is a very odd scenario indeed. Can it be just simple revenge? You see, in the 2020 election, the party he was heading, which at the time was still called the Brexit Party, it withdrew from a lot of seats, advising people to vote Conservative so there'd be a good Conservative majority big enough to get the referendum done. Farage stood down a lot of Brexit Party candidates for that purpose, which enabled Boris Johnson to get an 80-seat majority, and that should have been enough to do some amazing, remarkable things, to get rid of a lot of Tony Blair's rubbish, as well as do a decent Brexit. And at the time, and that was tremendously self-sacrificing of Farage. He was prepared to sacrifice his entire, it was like he didn't want a political career, and he was prepared to sacrifice it all just to get Brexit done, which he believed was for the good of the state. And the Conservatives squandered the opportunity that he'd handed to them on a plate, and done so much to hand to them on a plate. Admittedly, COVID threw a spanner in the works, but the fact is that Boris fudged it. Even worse, Boris didn't give, nobody in the Conservatives, well, hardly anyone that I heard of anyway, gave any credit to the Brexit Party for the win that they'd been given by the Brexit Party. Nor did Johnson show any recognition or reward, no gratitude at all. Do you see where I'm going here? After the treatment that Farage got from Johnson, and also the betrayal, the complete betrayal of the Conservatives over Brexit, Farage said, when asked, because people asked, if there's another swing vote of some sort between Conservatives and Reform, are you going to reach an agreement with the Conservatives to ensure that at least one of you gets the seat from Labour? And Farage said no. No, even if it meant Labour getting the seat. He did that once before and he got kicked in the teeth, and he's not going to do that again. As I said, even if that meant neither Conservative nor Reform winning. And it became obvious in the last election. Here are the Bloomberg figures. Let's have a look at this. These are the Bloomberg figures. Reform UK surge turned a Labour election win into a Tory wipeout. Those searching for the moment Labour's election landslide was confirmed should look no further than 3:15 a.m. on Friday. That's very, very quick. You know, Thursday was the election day. By just the turn of the day, it was also obvious. That was when the seat of West Bromwich flipped from Conservative to Labour with a majority of nearly 10,000, despite Keir Starmer's party only growing its vote share by 4 points. Most of the 27-point drop in Conservative support in the West Midlands seat was likely driven by Reform UK, which won 20% of the vote. You see? And here is a diagram. These are the winners, the red arrows. The turquoise arrows are Reform. And it says here, Labour flipped at least 182 Conservative seats, likely helped by major Reform gains, especially across Northern England and the Midlands. Those were previously traditional Labour areas which voted Conservative in the last election. And the Conservatives betrayed them, or betrayed their wishes. So, you see, at that point there, I actually don't blame Farage. I think he was right. Let's face it, the Conservatives were toast anyway. So it wasn't as if the election was balanced on a knife edge or anything. And I don't blame Farage for his particular stand at the time. It taught the Conservatives a very well-earned lesson. They deserved that. And it was reasonable and understandable that Farage took the position he did. But now he appears to be going for the Conservatives deliberately. He's taking over Conservative policies and sieving off its wavering fringes, as well as the wavering fringes of the Labour Party, of course. But it's also possible that what's at the back of his mind is the destruction of the Conservative Party altogether. Because the Conservative Party really is in trouble now. It's not recovering from this election disaster. And it looks like that's what's on Farage's mind, far more than the furthering of British interests, which is what's worrying me. He's now gone dead against the removal of illegal migrants, and recent figures on just one group of immigrants, the Somalis, the figures are quite shocking. Something like 80% of them are on benefits, aren't working. And this is a bit in the Telegraph, not specifically about Somalis. Benefits are being claimed by over 1 million foreign nationals, according to an analysis of government figures. Households with at least one foreign national claimant received more than £7.5 billion in universal credit in 2023. Figures from the Department for Work and Pensions show. So this is before this government got into power, and when the Conservatives were in power. Foreign nationals become eligible for universal credit and other benefits on the same terms as British citizens once they are granted indefinite leave to remain and have settled or have refugee status. So £7.5 billion is quite a lot of money, isn't it? And this support is being dished out now by a Labour government, which is at the moment, well, it was dished out by the Conservatives, and now the Labour government is cutting benefits to the average working Brit, stuff like pensions are being taxed higher now. National insurance is going up. There are far more taxes and benefits are being cut just to try and balance the books. And I was listening to GB News, and somebody was talking about a woman who was on a pension. She had been working in the NHS and had been beaten up by aggressive patients, was now retired, forcibly retired because of her injuries, and she is managing on a pittance, and just down the road, according to this guy on GB News, there's a whole hotel where a lot of illegal migrants are being given 3 square meals a day and mobile phones. Now, it's absolutely true that some benefits should be cut back, but it's very obvious that the Labour government are cutting back on what they call unnecessary benefits in order to save the money that they're doling out to illegal migrants. We all know that. Farage knows that. Everyone knows that. So how could it not be in British interest to remove these people? And yet Farage is now, as a matter of policy, not talking about doing that. It seems he's following policies that are actually directly deleterious to the interests of the kingdom. What happened to the idea that a government's first duty is to protect the nation from foreign invasion? We're being invaded, and it's up to the ruling party to repel the invaders, and they're not only not doing that, they're actually supporting them, of course, at our expense. And now Reform appear to be standing for the same idea. At this point, you wonder, is Farage worried about the country, or is he just after revenge on the Conservatives? Well, it's something to think about, isn't it? And a very unpleasant situation. Of course, I am very disappointed with Reform. I had put my hopes on them. Doesn't look like there's anyone to vote for anymore, does it? Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.